Sanford Police Department. Line is being recorded. This is Sean.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retrieve View Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retrieve View Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes. He's here now. He was just staring.
Oh, he's just walking around the area?
At all the houses.
Okay.
And now he's just staring at me.
Okay, and he said it's 1111 Retrieve You or 111?
That's the clubhouse.
That's the clubhouse. Do you know what he's near the clubhouse right now?
Yeah, now he's coming towards me.
Okay.
He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
Okay. How old would you say he looks?
He's got a button on his shirt. Late teens.
Late teens, okay.
Something's wrong with him. Yeah. He's coming to check me out. He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is.
Okay, just let me know if he does anything, okay?
Over here.
Yeah, we got him on the way. Just let me know if this guy does anything else.
Okay. These assholes, they always get away. Yeah. When you come to the clubhouse, you come straight in and make a left. Actually, you would go past the clubhouse.
Okay, it says on the left-hand side from the clubhouse?
No, you go in straight through the entrance, and then you make a left. Yeah, you go straight in, don't turn and make a left. Shit, he's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay, which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Okay.
All right, sir, what is your name?
George. He ran.
All right, George, what's your last name?
Zimmerman.
And, George, what's the phone number you're calling from?
407-435-2400.
All right, George, we do have him on the way. Do you want to meet with the officer when they get out there?
Yeah.
All right, where are you going to meet with them at?
If they come in through the gate, tell them to go straight past the clubhouse and straight past the clubhouse and make a left. And then they go past the mailboxes. They'll see my truck.
Okay, what address are you parked in front of?
I don't know. It's a cut-through, so I don't know the address.
Okay, do you live in the area?
Yeah.
What's your apartment number?
It's a home. It's 1950. Oh, crap. I don't want to give it out loud. I don't know where this kid is.
Okay, do you want to just meet with him right near the mailboxes, then?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, George, I'll let him know to meet you with you out there, okay?
Actually, could you have him call me, and I'll tell him where I'm at?
Okay, yeah, that's no problem.
You need my number, or you got it?
Yeah, I got it. It's 407-435-2400.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, no problem. I'll let them know to call you when they're in the area.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
This video will deal with one aspect of the George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case, the supposed following of Trayvon by George. These are my opinions based on the facts as we know them at the date of posting this video. These opinions are subject to change. I do not believe George Zimmerman followed, much less chased, stalked, or hunted down Trayvon Martin. Even if he did, in a sense, follow, it was not intended to confront, accost, detain, fight, or murder. One reason I believe this is because of his prior history with such matters. First, with the other calls we have available to us that were made by George, he always keeps within the realm of watching or observing, not getting personally involved. In 2 of his recent calls, he even mentions to the dispatcher,
"And what is he doing?"
He keeps going to this guy's house. I know him. I know the resident. He's Caucasian. And he's going up to the house and then going along the side of it and then coming to the street and then going back to the side of it. I don't know what he's doing. I don't want to approach him personally. If you have an officer available, I'd probably have him stop on Reinhardt.
And when asked by the dispatcher in another call if he could still see the guys...
Can you still see them?
No, ma'am. I didn't want to attract attention.
How long ago were they out there?
Just, 10 seconds ago.
And in a third call, George says exactly the same thing that he did in the Trayvon Martin call about giving out his address.
Sanford Police Department, Line Quarters, Petra.
Hey, our neighborhood got burglarized or robbed today, and my wife, I saw one of the kids that did it, and we see someone that matches his description in the neighborhood right now again.
Okay, and what's your address out there?
I'd rather not give out my address because he's obviously in the neighborhood, which is the clubhouse.
Okay, so does he live in the neighborhood, or he's just out walking?
I don't know. It's the first time I've ever seen him.
Okay. And what is your name?
My name is George.
And your last name, George?
Zimmerman.
And your phone number you're calling from? Okay. And is he white, black, or Hispanic?
Black.
And what's
My
he
wife
wearing?
talked to Detective Walker and gave him a description of the guy we see now.
Okay. What's he wearing right now?
A white tank top and black shorts, and brown sandals, and black socks.
Okay, and is he walking?
Yes.
Okay, and so is he near the...
The back entrance to the neighborhood.
So he's at the back entrance?
Yeah.
He just went between the houses.
He just went between the houses to the back?
Yeah.
Shoot.
He was looking at your car.
I'm not.
No, George.
Why not?
No, don't call.
Okay, we'll get an officer out there, check the area.
In fact, he says, sounds like, and acts the same in all of his calls of this nature. The only thing different about the Trayvon call was that George got out of his truck to get into a better position to watch Trayvon. But of course, there was much more reason to believe George's actions were not malicious, as many have claimed, and so let's explore what else we know. I'm aware of some reports that state George once caught a thief. Though the details are sketchy, I believe this was the only time he personally got involved, and that was only after witnessing an actual crime. That's important to understand, as we can contrast that with his other actions and with his actions regarding Trayvon. That is, if you believe Trayvon had committed a crime, then why did he not get personally involved, like with the thief? The call he placed about Trayvon was merely a call of suspicion. He did not call the emergency number 911. Rather, he placed a call to the police non-emergency number. This is important to understand as it goes to George's mindset, that he did not believe Trayvon had committed a crime or was about to. Rather, Trayvon was acting suspiciously, and so George acted accordingly, and consistently with his prior calls of such nature. I could go on about other details that would speak to George's character, such as how he was calm in his call, much like all his other calls, except for when Trayvon approached George, while George was sitting in his truck.
Yeah, he's coming to check me out. He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is.
Okay, just let me know if he does anything, okay?
Over here.
Yeah, we got him on the way. Just let me know if this guy does anything else.
One must understand something here. George had his gun here as well. If he's so worried or overzealous about Trayvon, why not get him at that point, when he is close, instead of trying to hunt him down in the dark when he's lost sight of Trayvon? George took an active role in caring about the community he lived in. He was one course credit away from finishing his associate's degree in criminal justice. He was accepted in and completed the Seminole County's Sheriff Community Law Enforcement Academy, which is designed to educate the citizens of Seminole County in the concepts and procedures of law enforcement, a program that goes on for once a day for 14 weeks, 3.5 hours a day. He wanted to be a lawyer, judge, or magistrate like his father. He was elected by his neighbors to head the Retreat at Twin Lakes Neighborhood Watch program, which was started by the community and the Sanford Police Department. This is just some of what speaks to the character of George, and all of it is important to understand because it shows his knowledge and interest in such matters and how he chose to pursue such things in an intelligent, professional, learned manner, and not some gung-ho, throw on the BDUs, wannabe cop, where's my gun manner. Speaking of the gun, he only got it for protection from the loose, aggressive pit bulls in the area that once cornered his wife. As far as racism, prejudice, or racial profiling goes, we can safely say at this point nothing could be further from the truth. I will save that aspect for a different video. For now, I want to concentrate on the so-called following of Trayvon. Let's examine the night in question. I will be using a somewhat faster than average human walking speed of 1.5 meters per second. What is currently not available to the public is George Zimmerman's statements about what occurred that night, and we also do not have all the facts. Given that, we must piece together what we do have available to us to draw as good a picture as possible, but it's important to understand that some of this may change depending on new information. Let's start with the location of George's truck when he exits it to observe where Trayvon has gone after Trayvon had ran. In the call, George gives us 6 pieces of information. 1. Trayvon is located at the clubhouse. 2. Trayvon approaches George. 3. Trayvon runs down towards the back gate. 4. George is parked at the cut-through. 5. He cannot give the dispatcher an address because he is not parked in front of any home, but behind them where addresses are not in sight. 6. George gives directions for the police to enter the front gate, going past the clubhouse, taking the left that the street naturally follows. With this information and looking at a map of the area, I believe we can safely assume his truck is parked here when he exits it. Now let's work our way backwards from the time George tells the dispatcher he ran, in a tone that indicates he can no longer see Trayvon. This occurs at 2 minutes and 37 seconds into the phone call, 7:12 p.m. and 12 seconds. 24 seconds before this, George shuts his car door. Traveling at a speed of 1.5 meters per second would mean George traveled a distance of 36 meters, which just about puts him in viewing distance of being able to see south down towards the back gate at that area where the sidewalk travels north-south. To the T section of the sidewalk is about 44 meters. And so if George reported that Trayvon had run at this point, that he can no longer see him at this point, that would mean that George traveled 44 meters, which is faster than the 1.5 meters per second that we're using here, but not that much. Let's look at it this way now. We do not know if Trayvon ran down Twin Trees Lane, the north-south sidewalk, or Retreat View Circle, but we do know he's heading down south towards the back gate. I believe he ran down the sidewalk in between the townhomes. Here are the reasons why I believe that. 1. If Trayvon had run down Twin Trees Lane, it seems unlikely he would have gotten out of view of George so quickly. 2. It would seem more likely George would have driven instead of walking. So this narrows it down to the sidewalk or Retreat View Circle. The one reason I don't believe Trayvon ran to Retreat View Circle is because it only takes George 24 seconds to indicate to the dispatcher that Trayvon was gone. George would have had to travel about 77 meters in 24 seconds to reach Retreat View Circle, going about 3.2 meters per second. And judging from the phone call, that would be improbable if not impossible. At 1.5 meters per second, it would have taken 51 seconds to reach Retreat View Circle. So I have to believe Trayvon ran down the sidewalk in between houses. Let's look at Trayvon now. He is a tall, 6'2", young, fit football player. At 1 minute and 28 seconds into the call, Trayvon is close to George's truck. He continued walking from that point eastward, towards the sidewalk that goes in between and behind the townhomes. 38 seconds later, 2 minutes and 6 seconds into the phone call, he starts running. Given this information, we can say Trayvon walked about 57 meters from the location of George's truck to the point where he began running. This puts Trayvon about 19 meters or so west and about 7 meters or so north from getting around the corner of the townhome, out of sight of George. This is what caused George to exit his truck. He lost sight of Trayvon. He couldn't continue watching from that position. Trayvon started running, and he needed to travel only about 26 meters in order for George to lose sight of him. If Trayvon walked that distance, he could have made it in about 39 seconds. It took George 24 seconds to indicate that Trayvon was gone. Using a running speed of 3 meters per second, that would mean Trayvon got out of George's viewing distance in 8.6 seconds. Given that we're talking about a 6'2" young, fit football player, I'm comfortable saying he made it faster than that. At 2 minutes and 6 seconds into the phone call, George says Trayvon is running. 3 seconds later, at 2 minutes and 9 seconds, he opens the car door. 5 seconds later, at 2 minutes and 14 seconds into the phone call, the car door is shut. From the time Trayvon starts running to the time George shuts his car door, 8 seconds have passed. The same amount of time Trayvon made it around the corner, losing sight of George. It's crucial to understand this. Trayvon has already run around the corner before George even started walking in that direction. George lost sight of Trayvon before he started walking. How can he follow someone he can't even see? Because George didn't follow, much less chase him. He merely went close to the T-section of the sidewalk in order to observe Trayvon's position in order to give that information to the dispatcher. But instead, all he could say was, he ran. When George said yes to the dispatcher when asked if he was following Trayvon, he meant it in a way to say that he followed that same path that Trayvon took so he can continue watching him. This also accounts for the eyewitness that saw 2 shadows pass their window. First, they saw the shadowy figure of Trayvon pass. Then, about 15 to 20 seconds later, they saw the shadowy figure of George pass. Let's also not forget, George said okay to the dispatcher when he told him they don't need him to do that. And George replies okay, because he wasn't and didn't intend on actually following Trayvon. He couldn't, as he lost sight of him, even before he started walking from his truck. After George says Trayvon ran, we can hear his voice is calm, and it doesn't even sound like George is walking at that point. This continues from 2 minutes and 38 seconds into the phone call to the end of the phone call at 4 minutes and 4 seconds, 1 minute and 26 seconds later. The time at the end of the phone call is 7:13 and 39 seconds. Another thing that is important to note about the phone call is not what we can hear, but what we don't hear. We don't hear heavy running footsteps. We do not hear heavy labored breathing. We do not hear tense, erratic speech. These are things one would expect to hear in an actual case of someone chasing someone. We hear wind noise, but this can be easily explained by wind rushing against the phone, just as easily as the phone rushing against the air. One would have to look at the weather for that night, I believe it was rainy, to establish all this, but it must be known that it doesn't take much of a gust of a wind of air into the microphone of a phone to produce that wind rushing effect. So although that wind noise may give the impression of a run, it can also easily be the other way around, of air blowing into the phone. So when did George ever follow Trayvon? When did George ever chase Trayvon? There is no evidence that George chased Trayvon. The following is more nuanced and can be looked at in 5 sections. 1. Before George placed the non-emergency call. 2. During the non-emergency call before Trayvon ran. 3. While Trayvon ran when George gets out of his truck. 4. after George states Trayvon ran and indicates he's gone. 5, after George ends the non-emergency call. Let's go over each of these. 1. Before the non-emergency call was placed. We do not have any good information as to what happened before George called the non-emergency number. All we have is that Trayvon was reportedly on his way back home from 7-Eleven that is about 1,239 meters away, about a 15-minute walk from where Trayvon was staying. There were numerous reports to his timeline. One report says Trayvon left his home at 6:40. Another report says he left at halftime of the NBA All-Star basketball game, which can't be true because the game started at 7 and Trayvon was shot at about 7:15. Another says he left before the game. Another report states that Trayvon is seen on the 7-Eleven video surveillance somewhere between 6 and 6:30. WESH2 reports, a corporate spokeswoman for 7-Eleven said on Thursday they have a video secured at corporate headquarters showing Martin the night he was killed. An executive with 7-Eleven viewed the tape and can confirm, quote, he observed an African-American male in a hoodie purchase Skittles and an iced tea between 6 and 6:30 that evening, end quote. The most solid report seems to be the WESH2 report. We can ask at this point then, that if Trayvon was on the tape as early as 6 p.m. and it takes 15 minutes to walk home and maybe 5 minutes in the store, he should have been home by 6:20, long before George Zimmerman made his non-emergency call. If he was on the tape as late as 6:30, he should have been home by 6:50. This is still before George Zimmerman places his non-emergency call. It's 1,066 meters from 7-Eleven to the clubhouse, about 12 minutes. If Trayvon left 7-Eleven by 6:05, that puts him at the clubhouse by 6:17. If he left at 6:35, then 6:47. George Zimmerman placed the non-emergency call at 7:09, 52 to 22 minutes after Trayvon could have arrived at the clubhouse. Clearly then, Trayvon should have made it home before George placed the call. So what the hell is Trayvon doing? The family has repeated ad nauseum all Trayvon was doing was walking home. All he wanted to do was get home. And supposedly he was interested in watching the NBA All-Star game that started at 7 o'clock. So how is it he's at the clubhouse at 7:09? If he left the 7-Eleven as early as 6:05? If the times are true, it is clear that Trayvon was not all that interested in getting home. If he arrived at 7-Eleven at 6 o'clock and went straight there, that means he left his home at 5:45. George called at 7:09. A trip that should have taken Trayvon 35 minutes took anywhere from as much as an hour and 24 minutes to 54 minutes. That's 19 to 49 minutes of clearly not just wanting to get home by 7 o'clock. The only thing I'm aware of what George Zimmerman was doing before the call is that he was reportedly going to the Target, which is out the main north gate. This brings into question of how does he end up at the cut-through where he exits his truck. One theory is George could have spotted Trayvon as he may have cut through in between the townhomes through the trellis area, which could have been the first thing that caused George to be suspicious. Let's also keep in mind that nearly all of the robberies that have occurred at the retreat at Twin Lakes took place at the outer perimeter of those townhomes, right where Trayvon may have passed through. As George observed that, he could have slowed down to see what Trayvon was doing. Trayvon crosses the street, goes behind the row of townhouses, furthering George's suspicion. George pulls forward and sees Trayvon emerge out from behind the townhouses, going towards the back of the clubhouse. George continues down the road and turns right onto Twin Trees Lane. Seeing Trayvon hanging around the clubhouse, he continues down Twin Trees Lane and parks about 30 meters down and calls the non-emergency number. Let's say the distance traveled by Trayvon from when he was first spotted by George to the clubhouse is 153 meters. That would be about 1 minute and 42 seconds. So, should we consider this following? Well, in some sense, but again, it is only to observe, to watch, as it's dark and Trayvon is behind the townhomes and other objects such as trees are in George's way. George is merely moving to better positions to observe Trayvon. There are two more scenarios to consider. George could have first spotted Trayvon hanging around at the clubhouse, and this caused George's suspicion. So he stopped to see what Trayvon was up to. Trayvon then continues east, then south, behind the trees where the mailboxes are at. George proceeds down Retreat View Circle, makes a right on Twin Trees, and parks, again, about 30 meters down the street, viewing Trayvon out his rear view and side view mirrors, and makes the call. This would take very little time and would not constitute following, but yet, again, merely trying to get into a better position to observe. The third scenario is that George left his home, and instead of taking Retreat View Circle to the main gate, he takes Long Oak Way, then Twin Trees. This would seem unlikely, as the logical path to the main gate is Retreat View Circle. However, if George did go this way, and spotted Trayvon hanging around the clubhouse, stopped his car, again in that same spot, then he clearly did nothing before the call that can even be construed as following. Also, if he traveled up this way and parked at the cut-through, then it certainly isn't following. These are the scenarios I have considered, and it's only the first one that can be construed as following, but as I stated, the intention was to get into better position to observe, to watch. The next section to consider is during the non-emergency call, before Trayvon ran. If George had placed the call before he made it to that spot, then all we're talking about here is some of the first or second scenario in the first section, and nothing in that call indicates anything in this regard. The third section of when Trayvon ran we have already covered in detail. The fourth section is after George states Trayvon ran and indicates he's gone. We covered this, but it's worth reiterating here. After George says Trayvon ran, we can hear his voice is calm, and it doesn't even sound like George is even walking at that point. This continues from 2 minutes and 38 seconds into the phone call to the end of the phone call, which is 1 minute and 26 seconds. The time at the end of that call is 7:13 and 39 seconds. So there's nothing there to indicate that he is following, chasing, or anything. The final section is after George gets off the phone, and for this we have George's statements to the Sanford Police Department, then again to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and a third time to the FBI. We have none of these files, but an investigator close to the case believes George Zimmerman's account of the story. Then there's the supposed girlfriend of Trayvon, mentioned by Crump and Company, who he mentions her by the name of DeeDee, that supposedly had a conversation with Trayvon about George's actions from 7:12 p.m. to 7:16 p.m., when the call abruptly ended after she heard words between the two and a scuffle of sorts which caused the phone to go dead. I will not say much here about this DeeDee, except to say that if a girlfriend of Trayvon heard such a dastardly thing occurring, you would think she would contact Trayvon's friends, Trayvon's family, or even the police. Trayvon's family did not know until the next morning, who were informed by police. Trayvon's friends did not know until somewhere around 2 in the afternoon, who were informed by the family. There's no report of this DeeDee calling police. So who did DeeDee inform of this dastardly thing she just heard? Well, apparently nobody. In light of that alone, it's difficult to believe she heard anything that's being reported that she heard. Then there's also the question of who she is. A close friend of Trayvon has stated that the girlfriend he knew Trayvon was going out with did not know of his death until days after. So this DeeDee cannot be Trayvon's girlfriend as reported. Other than that, I will leave you a link to this site that goes further into details about DeeDee. Finally, we have reports that George was heading back to his truck after the call had ended, and he had gotten an address off of one of the townhomes. The scenario that seems most likely to me is that after George gets off the phone, he heads south, down Retreat View Circle, towards the back gate, where he thinks Trayvon might have gone. Clearly this is not following, as we know by the end of the call, along with the prior 1 minute and 28 seconds of the call. He has absolutely no idea where Trayvon is at. Again, you can't follow somebody if you have no idea where they're at. George more than likely is headed that way because 1, there's the exit out that way. 2, Trayvon originally headed that way. 3, in previous calls he mentions others who have run off that way. 4, he wants to see if he can see where Trayvon is so he can report that to police when they arrive. As we can see, there is nothing in the after call section to indicate George followed Trayvon. So how does George end up back near the T section of the sidewalks, about 30 feet south of the T? Well, the simple answer I could come up with is that after George traveled down Retreat View Circle, he figured Trayvon had run out of the neighborhood, and so he decided to head back towards his truck, taking the sidewalk that runs north-south between the townhomes. Finally, we have George's father, who says George was heading back towards his truck, except on the east-west sidewalk instead of the north-south sidewalk like I believe, when he was confronted by Trayvon and the fight occurred. This is a little difficult to believe because the body of Trayvon Martin is located about 30 feet south of that T and a few feet towards the townhome. In the end, though, I do not believe George followed Trayvon, and he certainly did not chase, stalk, pursue, or hunt him down. The actions he did take were merely to observe Trayvon's location, to provide that information to police. These actions that may be called following by some were not intended to confront, accost, detain, fight, or murder, and that is what we call context dropping. People say, George said he was following Trayvon on the tape, but they never think why. These terms, chase, stalk, pursue, or hunt, are used purposely by folks who want to maintain a certain storyline. But nothing in the evidence so far supports that story. Until evidence comes out to say otherwise, it is only a myth. I will leave you with some questions that I posed in my Questions to Trayvon Supporters video and at the beginning of this video. Why didn't George just get Trayvon at the clubhouse or when Trayvon came up to his truck? He has his gun with him. Why not detain him there if that was his intent? Why wait till he runs off into the darkness, taking on a great threat and great risk to himself in following him?